Welcome to the Art of Hunting podcast. We have got a really cool episode today. Zach White is in here in the studio with us, and Zach has been helping us on video and audio stuff for almost a year now. So getting the podcast up and off the ground. If you followed along on YouTube, you've seen a lot of new content, a lot of new stuff. That was not me. That was Zach kind of spurring all that along. So this is his first time on the other side of the camera. And we've got a new video podcast episode going with audio, and we're pumped to have him here. We're going to talk about deer hunting and probably a lot of other random stuff. So good to have you here, man.
Thanks for having me, man. It's the lights are bright on this side of the camera. I'm pretty comfortable setting everything up and doing it. And so it's been cool helping you with the video stuff, the podcast stuff. We dove into it and really wanted to push the video stuff pretty hard, and the video podcast ended up being a lot of work. So we stuck with our guns and have stuck with the audio podcast. And so shout out to everyone who's listening, because I think this last week I looked, we got about 200 weekly listeners, which is cool because we've grown it from the ground up. And as soon as I got here to the studio too, you were a guest on a couple of different podcasts. And I told you, I was like, dude, we've got to talk. I was like, you've done so many cool things. You've got a decade worth of experience, and regardless of if it's 1,000 people or just a few hundred people, it's valuable. And I think that people will follow, and it's cool to be able to help you build it. And in the video stuff too, it's certainly been a lot of work, and I've got a lot of respect for people who are consistent with content, because it not only to shoot it, but to edit it, and then just to keep relevant and being consistent. But yeah, like your biggest deal is like Tuesday's kind of our creative day. We sit down, do the podcast, do some video stuff, and then I just kind of take it and edit from there. But it's easy to come up with ideas. And, I think in today's world with the social media and everything, you've got to push the content because it's free. Yeah. And people, the eyeballs are there. People want the stuff. They want to see what you're doing. And so it's been a balance between like you focus on your art and what you want to do in your work. And whereas I'm coming in, I'm like, kind of taking you out of your comfort zone to really push some of the behind the scenes stuff. So we've been in back and forth, but we've been able to build an audience across all platforms that have been good, and it's been a good start. It's been a lot of fun. It's been a lot more of a challenge than I anticipated, I think. Because you watch everyone, you think that's easy. But then when you do it, it's a lot more work.
It's a lot of work.
It's work, you know?
Yeah, I think about what we've done here and versus like what like the hunting public guys do, where they go film a hunt and then they go to McDonald's and edit till 2 a.m. and then get up and do it all over again. Man, you've got to commit to doing it. And we've done a really good job making sure we do the podcast every week. Because I've seen people, and I've even had buddies that did a podcast, and it's real easy to fizzle out, man. And it's kind of like going to the gym or working out. There's gonna be days you don't feel like it, or you've got a bunch of reasons, and it's like, dude, I don't care if this one is not going to be great. Like if this workout's going to be terrible, I'm going to push through it to get through it. And I don't feel like we've had any dud episodes, but we've absolutely been like, we're doing a podcast today. Let's come up with something of what we're going to do.
Yeah, it's not hard to talk, but then you have to speak to your audience. You have to speak to, you don't have to niche down to like just nerd out about like, optics or bullets or, like, it's cool because you've been able to kind of define more of your target audience and to really like double down on like hunting and art. And so, but it is still a challenge just to even sit down and just to be able to speak on topics that people want to listen to. It's easy to talk, but it is a challenge to kind of stay on topic. And you and I both listen to a lot of podcasts, and all in all, it is a challenge, but it's fun. And so, yeah, as long as you just continue to stick with it, and the video stuff too, it just takes time. That's the thing I've learned the most from you. As you being an artist and all the small things you do, you always say like, this might not be like a big hit right away, but these are building blocks to get to where I really want to go. Yeah. And that just takes time. Yeah. And I have all these ideas. You can throw them on a whiteboard, but then it takes time to get there. And when you step up to the plate, you have to be specific about what you want, because then if you don't get what you want, you're also wasting time. Yep. And that's where we've done a lot of video stuff too, and it's a great idea. Then you throw it on there and you're like, man, I'm not going anywhere with this. Yeah. And so it's been a challenge, but it's been really cool. I'm grateful for the opportunity to be here and been able to do what I've done. And
one thing that is cool too is I feel like I've been in the outdoor industry for a decade, but not in the traditional sense. Like I'm not filming hunts, and I'm not, we are marketing a product, but I'm not like marketing a product. Like it's not like this is the Art of Hunting podcast sponsored by A, B, C, D, E, and F. And then you go to the woods and produce a TV show and you're using all the sponsor stuff. Like that's kind of the typical model that is in the outdoor industry. So I've worked in the outdoor industry, but I've been like behind the scenes and like working with brands. And I think we have a lot we can talk about that comes from a different angle. Yeah. Like we talk about, like Winchester's ammo boxes, and like nobody really thinks about all of the steps that it takes to create that stuff to get there, or the angles or the research or the things that you do to create it. So I think that opens us up to do a few new, different creative things and take a different angle. So we could talk on a single topic, but just come at it from a different angle. And that does open up some opportunities for us for content.
But it's been tricky too, based on that, because then it's just, it takes time to grow that audience, so you can throw your best stuff out there. And if it's only, depending on how many people you're going to reach, but it's just hard to keep showing back up. Yeah. And a lot of people get burnt out with it, and like there was a point, like doing all the creative stuff for you, I got pretty burnt out with it all because you just stare at it over and over again and you're just like barely moving the needle. And then you're like, and then sometimes, I told you too with the video, I was like, I just want to keep hitting singles and doubles, and we'll eventually get a home run. And that's what you kind of push for. But if you own a small business, and I tell everyone like content, social media, YouTube, video it's where it's at right now, because there's so many eyes that everyone, you look around, you go to an airport, you go to a restaurant, everyone's on their phone, everyone's consuming some content. And so it's just important, but it is hard to produce it. And so learned a lot. We've both learned a lot working together, but it's been cool. And so thanks for having me on the podcast. We can talk beer. We can dive into whatever you want, but it is different being on this angle of the camera than it is being behind the scenes. Austin back here, he's just shaking his head, nodding his head. He's like, It's different stepping up to the plate and talking. But no, we talked yesterday about, wanting to dive into some deer hunting stuff, and it's beginning to, October 31st, Halloween. So looking forward to November, that's for sure.
And a cold front on Halloween, even better.
No doubt.
I don't know. You're probably going to deer hunt tonight. I'm going to be trick or treating with the kids.
Yeah, that's fine. I do always enjoy the Instagram posts on Halloween. The guys like the Lindsay Waves and some of those guys who hunt. Some of the Harlan bow hunter guys. If I'm not in the woods on Halloween, I usually have some pretty bad FOMO. Which, if you don't know what FOMO is, it's the fear of missing out. So if I'm not in the woods, I'm like, God, I should be out there. Yeah. But you already killed a nice buck in North Carolina.
Yeah, man.
So,
no, I had a really cool hunt. And we had talked about this, and like you were saying earlier, you and I both listen to a lot of podcasts, and baiting is big in North Carolina. And the way mine worked out is I had two places I was baiting on this property that we own, and the deer that I was after was showing up from one direction about 45 minutes after dark, and then 20 minutes later he would have bit the other one. So I had a beat on where his direction was. And I remember hearing Cody DeQuisto talking about when he was hunting in places like public land that, well, I guess you can't bait on public land, but private or whatever, where he was hunting around people that baited. They weren't killing mature deer on the bait. He was hunting off of it. And so
you took that?
Well, that was kind of marinating in the back of my head. And then I was like, that deer's showing up 45 minutes after dark, coming from one direction. Then he's hitting this other bait pile. So I know his line of travel. So I know where he's coming from in the evening to bed. He wasn't bedded across the paved road, and there was only a couple little wood lots. And I had pictures of him on the one edge of this hayfield. And I was like, I'm 95% sure he's bedded in this kind of old, it's like a failed development. And they clear cut it, I don't know, 20 years ago. So it's kind of a high stem count area. And it's exactly the kind of place like a mature buck would bed. It's kind of, there's several houses in there, but not a lot of pressure or anything. A really secluded, he could lay up in there, get old, and no one would ever know it. And I had actually hung a set there a couple months ago, and I had pictures of him there, but he was in velvet then in daylight. And I was like, man, he's getting to that bait pile at 45 minutes after daylight. He's coming from this direction. I'm almost sure he's bedded there. I've got a set for that. I bet I can get a crack at him in daylight. And man, I needed the northwest wind to hunt it, and I needed a strong one because when the wind died out, the thermals would have reversed and gone downhill. So I needed a stiff northwest wind. Finally got it, and it just happened to be on a night Kim had the kids somewhere, so I didn't have any dad responsibilities, and slipped in there. He was the only deer I saw that night, and he came out right at last light. So got him.
Mm-hmm.
But I killed him 600 yards from my own bait pile, which is really ironic. But one of the things, you know, I'm really interested in your take on a lot of this. And, you know, we were both born in the Midwest. You basically hunted your whole life in Kansas, and then kind of trial by fire, you've learned some stuff about being here, and you've been here, what, 10 months, I feel like. So this is really your first real deer season here. And I was just curious, like, what you've learned, what are your take on it? And as we both go back, I'm going back to Illinois, you're going back to Kansas in a week or two, but like, what are you going to take back there? So how's your experience been?
Yeah. So, I mean, I didn't actually deer hunt when I was younger. Like my dad was a duck hunter, and so I got into the waterfowl game pretty hard, and I was following him around on the marsh when I was real little, and always just, my feet would be freezing, and I just remember a lot of that stuff. And so, like, I just never was around anybody who deer hunted, so I never really learned, you know, the old days of, you know, the Drury's and all that stuff. I never followed any of those guys, the bone collectors and all that. I just never did. I was a duck hunter, and I ran a hunting outfit for 10 years and sold that in 2020, and my wife and I hit the road. And so, but really, like, I've only deer hunted, like, 5 years, I guess, 4 or 5 years. And, yeah, like, what I've learned in the deer hunting in Kansas and out here is, like, it's drastically different just because of the deer numbers and just the terrain, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so I've consumed a lot of different content. And I was telling you yesterday, I really wish I could learn firsthand from somebody out here, like an OG guy that just a real woodsman, because that's what it really does take. Like, I feel like it's popular for people to try to learn from YouTube or learn from podcasts. Like, back in the day, it was just the magazines, you know what I mean? And then some of the deer TV stuff. But then, you know, you're like, how do you learn from, like, just an average guy? Like, back home in the Midwest, the deer numbers are high, and it's just a lot of ag. So, like, the deer kind of congregated down into wherever there's cover, the river bottoms, the pastures. And so, you know, you find some of that and there's water, you're going to find deer. Out here, when I got here, the mountains were huge. I was like, man, this is crazy, you know? So I started in August scouting some public land. Out here, they call them game lands. And I had some experience hunting some of the public land in Kansas. And so I was like, well, I'll just go see, because the cool thing about the game lands is that I do love is, like, you can just park your truck and just go walk and go hike. Yeah. And I've never been a hiker because I was always my mentality was like, if I'm going to go into the woods and go hike, I better have a weapon in my hand so I can bring out something back. I'm not just going to go north face it out and go. And now we have, like, my wife and I, we take the dogs and go, but, you know, that's popular up here, hiking and biking, and that's like a recreational deal. And so if I'm going in the woods, though, I'm going after some critters. And so the mountains, when I first got here, were huge, and I started scouting in August. And so I've been at it pretty hard for September. They opened in September. So 2 months now, and I've learned a lot. I started really running a lot of trail cameras. And the thing that the biggest learning curve for me, I would find a lot of sign in the bottoms. Mm-hmm. And I was bumping deer in the bottoms because nobody was hunting them. Yeah. Not a lot of deer, but I had some buck encounters early. And then I've been learning, like, I've got to go high. And I'm finding the most deer sign, like, around, like, 4,000 foot elevation. And I'm finding bucks. I've bumped some bucks. But the tricky thing is, like, why are they there? Why are they bedding there? And then it's just been hard for me to get back to them. Mm-hmm. Like, I can get back to the area. I can mark it. That's all easy. you can find the sign. If I found some scrapes or some rubs, usually there's been a buck close by, but they're not consistent. I'm not finding it's consistently because I just don't have enough experience yet with it. I feel like if I picked an area and got from me, it would just take years. And there's big deer out there. There's just not as many of them.
Yeah.
So
when you say 4,000 square or 4,000
foot of elevation,
4,000 foot of elevation, like what? Because we're at like 3,400 right here where my studio is. Like what? Does the vegetation change? Is there what's that line there that you're finding?
So the range that the mountain range that I'm hunting, it's like 3,000 acres. And so I think at that 4,000 foot range, the deer can parallel the terrain. They don't have to go up and down as much. So they can parallel. And so that's kind of where I'm finding quite a bit of bucks. I'm finding them bedding. I'm finding like used beds with hair, and I'm finding some rubs. And so what I'm learning is like a lot of those deer in the mornings, well, at night, they're going to come to the bottoms. They're going to eat in people's backyards. I see that. I'll drive at night and you see them crossing the roads, eating people's apples and stuff. And then like in the mornings, they're going to work their way up, and they're going to take the drainages up, and they're going to bed off certain ridges and stuff. And what I'm learning is they're based in places off just more of the thermal rise than the wind, and that's, I feel like, is the truth, because it might be a northwest wind, but depending on which side of the mountain you're on, it's swirling. It might be blowing completely south. It's always different. And so I'm not finding a lot of consistency with like where they're bedding on the wind, but like the elevation line, I'm really seeing the sign there. But the mountain range that I'm on is like, I think the peak's like 5,000 foot of elevation. And so, but I feel like that 4,000 foot is the sweet spot. But I'm hoping that all the scouting, all the cameras that I've been running is really going to pay off, because it's early. So a couple of the Facebook groups that I follow, they say like the peak rut here is like not even until like Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
So like
a lot of deer go down when rifle season opens, which I think is the 18th. I remember right here, but around Thanksgiving. Like Thanksgiving is that week where everybody hits the woods. Like even the guys that don't really hunt that much out of tradition, they'll go hit the woods.
And so I don't know, like it seems, I'm pretty sure if you live here, I don't even think you need a deer tag to hunt your own land. Like I think you can just hunt your own land. And so it's just a lot different. I asked a gal, I've got permission on 3 smaller properties, and I asked a gal, I was like, I've been hunting this public. I was like, do you mind if I bow hunt? And she just kind of laughed. She's like, I've never been asked, anybody's never asked to bow hunt. I think a lot of people rifle hunt.
Yeah. And
so it's been cool to not really run into a lot of the, people and see a lot of pressure up here. And so, I'm learning. When I was up there, I was always looking for this high stem count stuff and this real thick cover, but there's not a lot of pressure. There's not a lot of people. And I think down south where there's areas where there is a lot of pressure, then some of those deer, those bucks are going to push towards some of that good cover. But up here, I think they base a lot just on visual and the thermals. And so this is a whole new world for me, because in Kansas, in the Midwest, it's different because it's creek bottoms, river bottoms. They're going to bed probably just kind of based on cover and then the food, whatever food source within reason they're going to be. And it changes throughout the year. I mean, back home in the Midwest, obviously if the corn's standing in Kansas, we got a lot of milo, sorghum, and the deer are going to bed around that a lot. When that all comes off, then they're going to be pushed into the river bottoms, and then they're going to feed on like green wheat, maybe alfalfa, stuff like that late. And there's no ag here where I'm at. Like there's no ag at all. So it's all acorns and stuff. So it's been a real big learning curve. It's been fun. I do love it. I mean, I bought a little frame pack from a guy on Facebook, and I want to pack like a chocolate horn public land buck off so bad off that thing, just nostalgia and just kind of building it up. But it's been a learning curve. It's been fun. I mean, the thing that I learned, the biggest learning curve for me that I should have learned from day one, I wish I would have learned, was like, you got to start at the top. Those deer are high. And it took me months to realize like they are high, and you got to go to them. And then when you start at the bottom and get to the top, you said yesterday, you're like, you need to find a place to access from the top. I said, yeah, that would be nice.
That's the key. We face the same thing when we're turkey hunting, man. I mean, you're going to end up high no matter what. So you might as well just go before daylight and get high and start and then work your way down. But yeah, it's definitely a challenge. And I feel like, we've talked about this before. Like I'm a map dork. I'm a visual guy. I love looking at a new farm and trying to find. I mean, if you send me an aerial map of a place in the Midwest, I can probably name you 5 places you need to go look at right now. And I'm pretty close, might be off by 50 yards or so. But for the most part, like, you can look at an aerial map and determine where's the pinch points, where are they bedded. If this block of woods is the cover, he's bedded there, and they're going to this cornfield, and this fence row right between them is a great place. You can do that, but there's very little of that in the mountains, man. I mean, you've really got to you got to find where the oaks are. You've got to find out. There's a lot of stuff to it. And, you were talking about there's no ag. And I think the biggest cornfield that I've ever seen here is the pumpkin patch that we take the kids to. And Tucker, he just cuts it for silage and they take it off. So there is hardly any ag. And we're in the mountains. We're in Western Carolina up in the mountains. So, down in the lower parts of the state, there's ag everywhere. But yeah, man, there's just not a lot of ag. And it does make it hard to bow hunt. A lot of guys rifle hunt and do well there. But doing it with the bow is a lot harder. There's the terrain, there's the thermals, there's all that kind of stuff. So
I was thinking when I was hunting a couple weeks ago, I kind of started taking it personal. I was just like, man, maybe I'm just not really that good. And honestly, I really am not that good. It's like anybody can talk deer hunting, and there's more content based around hunting and deer hunting than there really ever has been. Yeah. You know what I mean? And a guy like me can take it and consume it all, but it's a whole nother ballgame when you're actually in there and doing it. You know what I mean? And when I got here, the mountains were huge, so big. And then basically from what I have been learning is like, there's a term called negative terrain. And basically you can look at a mountain, or you can, when you're in there, not on a map, when you're actually in there, and you can look and say, okay, the odds of like a mature buck traveling through this area in daylight is very slim. So you X that off. Then you go around, you exit that off. And then that, like the 4,000 foot elevation, there are places that you can repeat. You say, okay, I see deer sign here. And then I'm on the other side of the mountain. Then I'm like, okay, I'm also seeing sign here. And you start correlating everything together. And you're like, okay, so this is the elevation line they're on. Now I just need to be back in an area, be confident. And I think I need to give some of my spots more than several sits. You know, I think they're going to eventually be through there, but I need some trail camera data to kind of confirm that. But I'm just now getting it. I think the bucks are just now to the point, November now, where they are going to be moving more in daylight. So it's just a matter of time before things pay off. But yeah, I mean, I've got 2 younger brothers. I talk about them all the time. They shoot a lot of big deer in Kansas, and we can bait in Kansas, and it's easier because there's just not a lot of cover. Yeah. Mostly ag. Yep. And when there is good cover and there's water, there's usually deer there. And my brothers just kind of laugh because I just kind of think a lot of what I do is pretty crazy. But I was trying to get it on a lease, and this was 4 years ago maybe. And the guy, he's like, I'd hunted it before and I wanted to lease it just because I wanted to do what I wanted to do on it. And he's like, no, I don't really want to lease it. And so that whole thing kind of fell apart on me. So then that's when I started hunting public and got a mobile setup, tree stand, a couple sticks. And then I had just kind of hit the ground running. And I shot a public land buck in Kansas. That was in 2020. And then I went up a week later and shot one up in Nebraska. And so like, that was pretty cool. But coming out here, it's just a whole other world. The mountains are big, but there's things that I'm learning that are patternable, but it's just taken me a couple months to learn it. And if I don't shoot a deer out here, it's not a big deal because you just kind of bank the experiences and you just have to hunt to learn it. You can't learn it I wish I could learn firsthand from like an OG guy that had an old garage, like full of bucks, and he could just say
full of 120s.
Yeah, man. So well, that's the thing too. I don't care. But yeah, just those OG guys that aren't on social media that just have a wall full. They're out there everywhere. Yep. I wish I could learn firsthand from a guy like that out here, because it would like take my learning curve wouldn't be so steep. But it's a lot different than hunting the Midwest, and I think anywhere you go. But some of the hotter states like Iowa. I mean, Missouri is really popular. Obviously, Kansas, Illinois. I got buddies in Minnesota, Wisconsin, like there's just a lot of big deer up there. A lot of deer hunters too, but the opportunity to shoot a bigger buck is better out there than there is here. Now, there's some giant mountain deer out here, like, 140 or bigger, but they're few and far between.
And I wonder too, like, a lot of the time, like when I was growing up, that's when Pike County became the Golden Triangle, and there's been a lot of content about how to hunt in the Midwest and this and that and the other. It just really doesn't apply a lot to the mountains. But like the Southern Outdoorsman, we had those guys on. They produce a lot of really good stuff about how to hunt in the mountains. And I wonder maybe too if there's just a little bit of a lag in getting some of that kind of information and tactics to learn. Like, well, I think that OG guy's out there somewhere, but he may not be on a podcast yet.
100%. Yeah. Well, Andrew and Jacob, those Southern Outdoorsman guys, if you haven't listened to their show and if you're into deer hunting, they've got an awesome podcast. Check their stuff out. But they interview a lot of guys that just aren't in the industry. They're just OG hunters that shoot big deer. And I like that they can take anybody off the street and just ask the questions. And I think some of those guys who are interviewed, they're like, okay, like, yeah, this is just common knowledge to them, but they've been doing it for years. Yep. And then all of a sudden, like a guy like me that doesn't know, like I grew up duck hunting, I'm consuming that stuff like crazy. But then you have to apply it. And that's that's two different things. But there's certain things that I've learned from Kansas how to kind of carry over here. And I mean, obviously just the weather's the biggest thing. Like, you go out to a spot and it's early too. So I've put in a lot of time in early, and mentally it's been a battle. Like, am I in the right place? And you always have those doubts when you're bow hunting, but it's early. Like when the weather gets colder and the deer rutting, they're going to move. Mm-hmm. And so I might be in the best spots ever. But in Kansas, you see the sign, you see the tracks, there's so much more deer. There's more sign, you're in a good spot. Yeah. Out here, if I find one rub, I'm like, oh man, there's a buck in here. Yeah. But
and it's even subtle things like, we've all seen it in the Midwest where you're a creek crossing or on the corner of a wet field, it's pounded. It's like a cattle trail. But at 4,000 square feet, at 4,000 feet elevation, it's rockier, and it's a rock. There's very little to leave a track, it's rocks covered in oak leaves. And there's a lot of stuff like that too that's just different. And if you're looking for the same thing that you're used to in the Midwest, you're not going to find it. You got to kind of change. You got to change what you're looking for.
So yeah, I've deer hunted public land in Kentucky. I've deer hunted public land in Kansas, deer hunted public land in Nebraska, and then now here in North Carolina. And, this all just kind of like goes back to deer density. Now, like Boone, there's a ton of deer right here. Like where you're out like 10 miles from Boone.
Yeah, probably just about.
From here to Boone, there's deer everywhere. Like I know, honestly, I don't think the buck to doe ratio is very good. You see does everywhere. And I've got permission on one public or a private spot right up the road. And there's a lot of like really, really young fawns that are like still got spots on them. So I don't think that those does are getting bred out. They're dropping like that second. People talk about the second rut. Yeah. I just don't think there's enough bucks to breed all the does. Yeah. And so that's been the tricky thing too. It's like, I'm hunting, I might have a good spot. I might have good sign. I got a camera, but like, when's that buck coming back? Like how big is his home range? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And I think, that's been a big learning curve, and it's just a lot different than in the Midwest, Yeah. So
there's very little management, like, QDM stuff, it's been, and you hear about states like Pennsylvania and Michigan, and you hear some of the horror stories. And, North Carolina, it just has like a lot of tradition of you get your 8-pointer. Like people don't talk about score. They don't talk about it's an 8-pointer. And if you got a 10-pointer, that's a big deal. And even though that 10-pointer might be 110 inches, it's a 10-pointer. So it's a big deal. And there's a lot of, I don't know if I don't know if it's slow getting here or if it'll ever get here, but there's very few people that are passing up bucks, and it is what it is. So that culture of I got my buck, I got my buck, I got my buck. That may be a 6-pointer or it might be an 8-pointer, but there's not a whole lot of talk of like shooting mature deer, letting them grow. So I think that's a lot of it too, is the when you're seeing like there's the buck to doe ratios jacked up a little bit, that's a lot of it. People are gonna, 6 does and a 6-pointer walk into the corn pile where they're shooting the 6-pointer because it's a buck, and I think a lot of that factors in too.
Yeah, I got to tell you, the story about a couple weeks ago. So usually when I first started and I'd go to this public land, I would just always take the drainages up because the way the mountains lay out, there's always going to be running water that will come from a spring or whatever. And it's usually constantly running. So I'll take a drainage up and branch like off of that and hunt. Well, the one day, usually what I'll do is like, I'll hunt, hiking on a spot, set up, hang my sticks and saddle, hunt for 2 or 3 hours, and then I'll get down and usually I'll scout. So I've been it's hard for me just to go to like hike into an area just to scout. Like if I carry a bow, at least I'll get a sit in and then I'll get down and I'll go look. And so I did that. Well, my phone died. I don't know why it died, but it was probably like 11 o'clock or so. And I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to keep walking here. I want to check out this one spot. Then I'll drop down in my drainage and get back to the truck. Well, I ended up crossing over and I got down in the drainage and I was like, this is not taking me back to the truck. So I just started walking. And I mean, I wasn't going to, all those drainages will run back to the roads. Well, reason why I always take the drainages is because I don't want to get lost. Well, I was walking and walking and walking. I was like, yeah, I'm definitely lost. And I didn't have my phone. And so it's kind of funny just to think about being from Kansas and the flat land, like you don't really get lost back home. So I walked 2.5 miles to the road and then it was another 2.5 miles back to the truck. I didn't tell Jordan I got lost, but Jordan's my wife, but I didn't tell her. But it's just different, and I was more mad about that my phone was dead and I couldn't mark because I got into a couple nice hubs and I seen some good sign and I couldn't even mark it on my phone. And I was like, well, I hope I can get back here. But yeah, so it's just kind of funny because, back home, the wood blocks are so small or the river bottoms, you ain't getting lost.
Yeah.
But I need to get like a little handheld Garmin out here and just to be able to really, truly not have to worry about it. Cause I will, if I go hunting the next day, I'm charging my phone every night. Usually I'm taking a little power pack, but I didn't have one that day. And so, yeah, it's just kind of weird. And then the bears up here have been different too.
Yeah.
Cause I didn't know, I've heard on a couple of podcasts that people think that they can smell the batteries in the cameras, which makes sense. Now, the bears aren't eating my cameras, but they're attracted to them. They'll come to them and they'll knock them off the tree. But I actually was set up in a spot. I ended up shooting a doe in October, and I went back to the same spot, a lot of acorns dropping, and I had a mama bear and 3 cubs walk right underneath me.
Yeah. And
so that's a different deal too. Like when I leave and I hunt, and I'm not ever really afraid of walking out in the dark, but I don't want to run into a mama with some cubs. Yeah. And I'm getting a lot of bears on camera too. So it's just from being a Kansas guy, it's just so different seeing the bears. I'm sending the pictures back home to my brothers and stuff. And the game land that I'm hunting on, you can't shoot bear, but I've got permission on that property next to it. And maybe I would if I see one, but I haven't bought it. I think it's over $200 for a non-resident bear. I'm having enough trouble killing a buck. I probably won't mess with that. But if I don't buy a tag, I'll probably have one walk up underneath me. But I've been hunting hard. It's been fun. But
I'm not as worried about bears as much, but that property where I killed my buck, there's 2 black coyotes that are the size of a wolf. I'll show you pictures of them. They're huge coyotes. They've been here for years. My buddy Joseph has pictures of them and has seen them a couple times too. But like when I saw pictures of that, it's like, that makes me a little nervous about getting out of the tree. But just, they wouldn't mess with you. I'm not like afraid of, but you see them and it's like, holy crap, that's like a wolf, dude.
So one day I was coming back from lunch because we have a place just right, 5 miles up the road. So I go home for lunch, let my dogs out. I was coming back, dude, and one of those black coyotes crossed the road in front of me, and I stopped at the brakes. It stopped.
Oh, really?
And it was looking at me, and I thought it was a dog.
Yeah.
And I was like, holy cow. I texted my buddy, he's a big coyote, and he's like, dude, I'm dreaming of killing a black coyote. Yeah. So that was really neat. But yeah, he was right in front of me. Like,
I wonder if the same ones.
Well, it's just, where they did have that corn planted in the bottom up there? Mm-hmm. And he chopped, it was right there. It was right there in that spot. He come down and, so yeah, it was neat. He was big.
Yeah.
And I'd never seen a black coyote. I thought it was a dog. And I was like, what? And I was like, now, I guess if I knew it was a black coyote, I wouldn't have hit the brakes. I would have taken him out because I think it'd be neat. I'd love to have a black coyote pelt. That'd be cool.
That'd be awesome.
Well, I'd rather probably shoot one than I would, but.
Yeah. You were talking about getting lost. It reminded me of a story, the big difference in the Midwest and down here. But my dad in Illinois, he had a younger brother and a younger sister, and they would have been like, I don't know, like Brooklyn and Rhett's age maybe. And they had to ride the school bus. And there was a quarter mile between my parents' house, big ag field, and then the paved road, and they had to get the school bus. Well, they hid in the corn one day to avoid the school bus so that they could tell their mom that we missed the school bus. And I guess in those days, if you missed the school bus, you didn't go to school that day, you know? But they jumped in the corn and hid and then got lost. But eventually one of them was like old enough to know that like, okay, if we just follow a row, we'll get out eventually, because they were like freaking out like little kids and stuff. But, you know, if you get lost in the Midwest, like you pretty much just walk in a straight line and you're going to hit something that looks different. You're going to hit a river or a road or a gravel road that everything's a square leads to a paved road. But man, down here, you really could. If you got lost and you just happen to pick the wrong direction, you could walk for miles before you hit a paved road.
The game land that I'm hunting, they won't let you like primitive camp, but I think I'd love to do that, like spike camp, like just like you would for elk. Can
you keep a stand in overnight?
You can't.
Have to take it with you?
No, you have to take it with you. So, but I think I marked some spots on the map, and I was like, man, this would be so cool to pack in, carry a tent, stay, and then hunt from there. And there's some states like you could do that, but I think that'd be really, really neat to whitetail hunt and do that. Because a lot of times when you get in, it's like, it's easier coming down. Like the worst part is when you start at the bottom and you're like, okay, I got to go to the top here. And that's a mental battle just to go and do that. But I'd love to be able to get to the top and set up a camp and then just be able to kind of go out from there. I think that'd be a blast just to stay out. Now I'd have to have some external power packs so my phone wouldn't die so I wouldn't get lost. But yeah, I mean, I never even really considered it. Honestly, you just get up in there, and then I got off on, basically I needed to come back straight south, and I went too far west and got in the wrong drainage. And I went like completely the opposite way around, and I just followed the water all the way to the road. And I was like, I'd been there before, but I was like, yeah, this is crazy. So
what do you think? What's kind of your plan going back to the Midwest? Because I know, like for me personally, I kind of get stuck in a rut where it's like, well, this is my stand for a South and this is my stand for a Northwest. And, you know, as you start listening to like a lot of guys that hunt mobile, as you start hunting different terrain, you start to think like, man, that's always been my stand for a Northwest. But like, what if I go 100 yards down here? Or, you know, and you know how it is too, when you get, when that first doe pops in, dude, you can be 300 yards from the action and you literally don't see a deer, and 300 yards that way, you're in them all day. So I know for me personally, when I go back, and I've already killed a buck up there, so I'm going to kind of I'm going to hunt some places more to try them out than I am actually trying to kill anything, because I won't be able to kill a buck. But like, what do you think you've learned you'll take back to the Midwest?
Well, I've just we talked before, I've never been a fan of hunting the rut. Now granted, I'm not the guy either. My brothers are more of like, they watch the deer grow. They'll keep the trail camera data. They know like this buck's going to show back up on this time frame. And they do like the pre-rut stuff, because that's just when those bigger bucks are going to be moving, looking for does. I just never been a fan of it, because I always feel like I'm always out of it. And I kind of would just mentally, I would just push into places and kind of want to hunt. And I would never be willing to stay on a spot. And I think in the rut, you do need to hunt. Yeah. So like some of those proven stands are worth hunting. If you can access them and you're not blowing it out, or you're not getting down and blowing deer out, there's a lot of value to having those spots. But being mobile, I always felt like I was out of the game, and I kept wanting to move, whereas like, man, like this is good enough to stay. And so being older and having more experience now, I think I would take that back. And I think in the mountains, that's what's taught me too. Like, it's a lot of work to get to those spots. I have some trail camera data now that there are some bucks that are moving through an area. It's just, I need the right weather for them to do that in daylight. And when I go back home in the Midwest, I need to, if I scout my way in on a property and I like the place, I need to be willing to go back to it 2 to 3 sets and give it some time, because it can happen, you know, and those deer and those bucks are going to move. I'm more of a fan of like the pre-rut stuff, trying to get some bucks over scrapes and getting a new, getting those bucks to move through and looking for the first doe. But when they're locked down, I think it's just a crapshoot. But then I do like hunting before Thanksgiving, like a later rut, because I still feel like those older deer are moving a lot more. And it's usually colder than I like it. You're always it's going to be cold. And so, and I've just never really had much experience, with a lot of success in the rut. You see it all, and the guys are shooting big deer left and right across the Midwest. But no, that's what I take the most, is just being confident in knowing what I'm looking for now, and just being able to give the spots that I find more time, and just letting it develop. But we've talked a lot about, because you've had your farms and your properties kind of like my brother's, and then just, it's going to be good this day, and I'm going to give it some time. But I think if you have a mobile setter, like guys that have their farm, and I think a lot of people, they don't want to get aggressive. They don't want to be mobile. They don't want to blow deer out. But I think during the rut, I think a guy ought to.
Yeah.
You only have a limited window. If you have a week, knowing what I know now, mobile hunting, I don't know that guy just ought to just dive into some bedding areas, but I think a guy should push it to where if you have a stand on your back, you need to get downwind, you need to be close, you need to give yourself a chance versus just sitting back and like, oh, it was good here last. Well, it's constantly changing. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And so I think a guy ought to be more aggressive during the rut based upon what the past success on their farm has been. And I think it's a fine line of both, like when I hunt the public, I'm able just to push and be mobile, and I don't really care because it's not my little property. And if you have a good 80 acres, my brothers hunt completely different than I do because they wait, they have limited time with their kiddos. They're real specific, and they're successful because of it. I think a lot of people hunt their private properties too much. They put too much pressure on their deer, and I think they should apply the pressure when it's right. And I think a lot of people don't, maybe, that maybe that's backwards for some people. And, I think it just takes experience, taking what's worked for you in the past, but then being able to try new things.
Yeah. Yep. I've always liked the challenge of like getting into a hedge tree in a fence row, like getting the spot that I want to go to. And so I think that's going to be something cool that I'm going to try this year when I'm up there, is just, when you're hanging a lock on, a lot of times, and my buddies, Dave and Ed, they're like OG guys that have hunted. Dave is 70 something years old. He's killed everything you can possibly imagine with a recurve. And those guys will put a stand on that camera tripod, if it's the right spot. But sometimes you tend to get limited by the tree, like this is the spot, but man, that 60 yards down there is the only good tree I've got to get in and out. So I'm looking to try to wiggle some stands in really marginal trees just to see if they'll work. So, yeah, I'm with you, man. I feel like, a lot of the places, we've got a couple places in Illinois, and they don't get hunted till we get there. So a lot of times I do feel like that helps us out because nobody has screwed with it until we get there. But then by the end of a week, you've kind of pounded through a 60 and a 40, pretty hard. But I feel like it is a sign of maturity is knowing when to go, and then when you go. Like don't kind of don't get too cautious in it. So
no, my brother and I talk a lot, and going back to some of the guys here in North Carolina, and just they want to kill their bucks. Since it's $2 state, rifle hunting I feel like's popular here too. But I feel like
muzzleloader's real popular too here.
Yeah, I feel like deer hunting is, for a lot of people, they like to hunt. They have limited time. When the seasons are changing, things get cooler, people like to deer hunt. I feel like if you have a property to hunt and you're familiar with it, and you've just got your spots and you got your cameras, you got your pictures, and it's a social thing. But then I was talking to my brother about this the other day. I feel like there are a select few people who really are obsessed with trying to kill big deer. Mm-hmm. And and there's very few people like making content about it. And it's hard to consistently kill big deer. You got to be obsessed with, you got to have a lot of time too.
You have
know what I mean? A lot of time, and you have to spend a lot of time doing it. And, but being able to try new things is certainly, I think, is important, and just kind of being an open mind and just kind of not being stuck in your ways. And like, even for me, being able to like stick to certain spots and going back to it, that's kind of been a big learning curve. But no, I mean, I think, so like if a guy kills a big buck and shoots a 100, whatever the case, maybe 150-inch buck, and it's for him, the buck of a lifetime, I think a lot of people are just kind of happy with that. And they'll deer hunt. They don't really care about, oh, let me kill another one. And my brothers and I, we talk back and forth, and I'm like, we're just a little bit probably different than a lot of people. You know what I mean? Like you see like a lot of guys who have the opportunities to grow deer and some of the whitetail property stuff and the Bomars and the Lee and Tiffany's, and some of those guys who have the properties in Iowa to grow those big deer and they're killing big ones. They have to spend a lot of time and a lot of money. I think for the average guy though, like I think for me, just to be able to hunt a lot of different places and taking in and soaking in as much information has really helped me be more rounded as a hunter. So then when you are on 40 acres, you're like, okay, like I have a lot of experience of different things, and I'm going to try this new, and I'm going to be confident with what I'm doing. If it works, it works. And it's still fun. But I guess what I'm trying to say, it's like being from the outside, just growing up as a duck hunter and being a deer hunter, this whole game is new to me, and I've learned a lot. So I'm just taking little bits and pieces from everyone and everything that I consume and trying to like build my own. But I don't really have that defined. I'm just kind of running and gunning with the stand. Yeah. Like my wife's like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "I don't know." I'm just hiking in and hiking out and trying not to get lost, trying not to run into any bears. But it's fun. I mean, the best time of year by far is here. I mean, if you hunt, if you love to deer hunt or anything, get out with your friends and family and enjoy it, because it's just, the weather's right. The leaves are turning. It's cool to be here in the fall and watch all the leaves be dropping and changing colors. It's been neat because we don't have that in Kansas. But yeah, if you deer hunt, make sure you get out, get after them, try some new stuff. That's what I would say to anybody who's, I mean, you can't compare really hunting the mountains to the Midwest, but I think all in all, if you deer hunt, you love it, and hopefully you love it for the right reasons. But I think getting out and doing it and enjoying it, I mean, it's awesome. Yeah, man. I'm taking Brooklyn this week before I leave. Nice. Where? We'll go over here to one of those box blinds, those old box blinds. Yeah. We are not going to be deer hunting. We're just going to kind of, do that thing with a 4-year-old girl. But I've already, she's in it for the hot chocolate, because I told her, like, when it gets cold out, we make like a big thermos of hot chocolate, and those kids think that's the coolest thing ever. Well, what was the deal with the turkey hunt? What did she always, you were promised her something? What was it? Donuts or something? Donuts. Yeah. I promised her. Well, I took Rhett turkey hunting, and then we went to West Jefferson and got donuts afterwards. And then of course he comes home and tells his sister that we got donuts and she didn't, to, rub that in. So I told her that when I would take her, we would go get donuts. And long story short, it didn't work out. We didn't make it work till like 2 p.m. And Rhett's was a morning hunt. So we drove by the Bama field, and there were 4 longbeards in a place where I know we could get on them and even kill one with her there, And, but she had it in her head that we were going to get donuts first, and I try to keep it fun for them, like just cool, because I can get really into it and really competitive. So I told her we were going to go get donuts, and she was adamant she wanted to go get donuts first. So I'm like, all right, we'll go get donuts first. And we're driving past longbeards that I know we can get on to go to West Jefferson, 20 minutes away, to go get donuts. They were out of donuts because it was the afternoon. So she got a cupcake with blue icing. We went back in. The turkeys had moved off. We didn't get on anything that day. We sat in the box blind, and she had fun running a turkey call. And then her poop was blue for like 2 days after that. Awesome. Because of the icing. Awesome. And Kim was like, what's going on with her? And I was like, oh, I gave her that blue icing cupcake. Like the only stale cupcake at 2 p.m. at Ingles that had blue icing. So her deal now, you got it in her head to get some hot chocolate, huh? We're going to bring hot chocolate with us. Nice. Yeah, and she's already got her cup picked out that she wants to take with us. You going this week?
Yeah, we'll go this week before I leave.
Nice.
But it's it's supposed to get cold, so I'm not going to take her out in a buddy stand. A lot of my hunting in North Carolina has changed because I've got more buddy ladder stands out than I do anything else, and it's more you're setting stuff up for them. Rhett's 7. We're about to the age where we're going to start wearing out some spikes and does, and so you're kind of getting into that sort of a mode.
Do you think you'll let Rhett shoot a deer this year? Have you talked about it? Because you didn't really want him to do anything with turkeys, but
he's not. I don't think he's quite ready.
Yeah.
But we'll go turkeys. Turkeys will be his first one.
Nice.
This spring.
Yeah.
So
that'll be cool.
But yeah, I mean that's kind of how my focus has shifted. And the other thing too is it's hard. There's a lot going on here at work, the office, family. It's hard for me to like kind of get away, like break away to go hunt for myself around here. But when I'm in Illinois, I have no responsibilities. It's like being 12 years old again. It's like, I got nothing to do today. Mom's going to cook dinner, So, it's easier for me to really go all in, and I'll sit all day, multiple times and really go in after it in Illinois. But it's so much harder. And the other thing is the deer are a lot smaller. Like, dude, I'm not going to sit all day for a 120 inch 8-pointer when there's work and family stuff here. So that's kind of my mentality is different. I've always done my serious stuff in Illinois and then just kind of jacked around a little bit more with the kids here. But I am looking forward to getting more strategic about it, having more time. We have a better setup here than we ever have. So just got to do it, man.
When I first got here in December, you were running quite a bit of corn, and you mainly just had a whole bunch of does in the yard just for fun. And then that nice buck ended up showing up, and you got really excited about that. And I didn't know that you hadn't really deer hunted up here. And I guess I do see it. Like, the caliber of deer isn't as good. There are some good caliber deer. Your buddies, like Shay's killed a nice buck, I think, right? They've killed some big deer up here. They're just few and far between. I think, like, the buck numbers overall are just not as good as the Midwest. But there are some big deer out here. I just feel like you said, you don't have the time to really put in. But it was cool that you shot that nice buck a couple weeks ago here because they're here. And, well, I've got permission right up the road there. And I was like, oh, I'll be able to hunt before work and stuff. And I don't really want to. Like, I do. Like, and, I usually show up at 9 every day. The time's going to change this weekend, so I could get out earlier, But, like, by the time, if I would have to get down to like 8:30, it'd just probably be really getting good. So it's like, you think for you live here, you have all these, but just like, I understand to where you don't really have the time to slip out. You might slip out, but you're not really invested in it as you would being, but hopefully as you've got some things set up now that you can spend a little more time. And when Rhett gets bigger, I mean, Rhett's going to be a killer. He's going to be shooting all kinds of critters out here.
Yeah.
And you've got some property to do that now, but it doesn't really matter like how big the deer are to me. I like the experience, and I like, I would like to just to kill a mature buck, like an older, whatever's like good age class, good mature buck for the area. I'm fine with it, but it's not as easy as it is back home, and it is what it is. But yeah, I mean, if you're traveling out to the Midwest and stuff, I mean, you're going to find deer sign everywhere. That's the tricky thing. You're going to see rubs everywhere and scrapes everywhere, and you have to find the food and then dive into some thick cover, and those bucks will be in there. They'll be moving, but you can't just settle on any sign. Like, you need to find the sign that's back in the thick cover and spend some time in a certain area that looks good, and then just kind of keep moving. I mean, I guess that's my mentality. Keep moving, keep moving. But thanks for having me on, Kirby.
Yeah, dude.
You need to talk and plug your sketch drop because that's going live. It's Tuesday.
Sketch drop happening. Today's Tuesday actually. So, sketch drop, we've got that going on. We have 9 of my favorite whitetail sketches, and those will be available till Sunday, November 5th. And then once those are gone, they're gone. We don't offer them again. So we plug them, we collect orders, and then we only produce a limited run off of that. So once they're gone, they're gone. So get those at ryankirby.com. You've got till, I believe, midnight on November 5th. So
buy 3, get 1 free, which is neat. They're cool. I think that mean, since I started here, you've literally built this sketch drop thing from the ground up. You see a lot of different people with small businesses running limited edition. My wife shops online more than anyone I know. And so she's the one that really, like, they do limited drops with jewelry. They do limited drops. Everyone's doing these drops. And you have never wanted to sell your sketches, so it's been cool. But it's still, I feel like people are finally catching on. You have a big audience, but still, you just have to, it takes time for people to understand what you're doing. But these sketches are really neat. And so buy 3, get 1 free. But the thing that is overlooked, I feel like, with these sketches, I think they're going to make great gifts for people for holidays. 100%. And you can put them up, frame them, put them up anywhere, and they're super cool. And so whatever you see online won't ever be offered again. And then, just be on to the next sketch drop. But you got a bunch of new canvases out, or a couple new canvases out.
We will have apparel. I'll go ahead and plug that. We're looking to get that in the middle of December.
Yeah,
so
that's exciting.
But yeah, like you were saying, the sketch drop makes great gifts. And again, they're limited, sign and stamp every single one of them. They won't be offered again. So we've got a lot of cool stuff. I feel like we've literally spent the past, several months gearing up for right now. New printer, new products, new canvases, new everything. So
it's been a lot of work. And if you don't know Kirby and being around him for a year, this guy, he's so humble. It's hard to get you to, like, promote your stuff. And I'm like, dude, we got to, you know what I mean? It's like, and it is good, like, I like that mentality too, but you always got to plug your own stuff. We don't have any sponsors coming in here on this podcast. And so as long as you keep promoting it, keep sharing it with a friend and family, it helps us out a lot. Anything you see on social media, if you want to share it, like, running the social media account, like, anything you guys share on your story or plug, that helps us out tremendously. But the apparel is going to be sweet. It's taken a year to even get.
Taking a long time.
And we got some samples in. That's going to be really awesome. So get some apparel. There's going to be a lot of cool stuff. Gearing up for a big fall. So, but yeah, man, thanks for having me on. It's been cool. Dude. It's been sweet
to have you on this side of the lens, man.
It's different being the lights are bright on this side of the camera, but it's easy to be like, okay, Ryan, sit down and we're going to talk about this. And then when I look at the camera, it's like, it's a lot easier said than done. It's a lot easier said than done, but
all right. Well, that about does it for this episode. Everybody, get out there, really enjoy this time of year. I think the term rutcation is overused a lot, but it is for a lot of us. And so just enjoy it, man. And remember, have fun. It's just a deer, and we make more of them every year. So don't get too stressed out. But anyway, have a great week, and we'll see you here next week on the Art of Hunting podcast.